And then butthurt Haman is going home in mourning with his head covered to go bitch to his wife and friends some more. And his wife mentioned that, if this was Mordecai who was honored in this way, you're toast. So you can see the tides turning, I suppose. And then immediately after that, he gets hurried off by the eunuch to the next banquet. But according to this story, he'd been going home from the banquet, and he saw Mordecai, and then he complained to his wife and his friends, and then he went back to the king immediately after that, and now he's going home again. So he's really just getting home from the last banquet, and all of a sudden he's getting rushed off to another banquet. Well, I guess you don't need any sleep for a drinking binge. So at the next banquet, Ahasuerus asks Esther again, "What is your request?" She then reveals that she is a Jew and that they are all to be killed. And she mentions in her plea, no enemy can compensate for this damage to the king. What damage is the king going to receive from some of his subjects being killed? Why the hell should he care? Also, Ahasuerus knows at this point that he has a Jewish wife, but he doesn't do anything about it. I guess he just has a short memory. And then Ahasuerus asks Esther, who has presumed to do this? You did, man. You're the one who approved the edict yourself. And of course, Esther says, a foe and an enemy, this wicked Haman. And, I expect, the dramatic music and the camera to zoom while she points her finger at the Haman. And he's terrified before the king and the queen. And Haman asks to beg his life from Esther. But Ahasuerus rose from the feast and went into the palace garden. Why? Why did he go into the palace garden? To mope? It's like, shucks. I gave this edict to kill all the Jews. Poor me. But why doesn't he do anything? Here's why. He returns to see that Haman had thrown himself on the couch where Esther was reclining. He's begging for his life, but Ahasuerus interprets this as a rape attempt, which merits death. And Esther says nothing about this. Not one thing. She shows no mercy when she's been shown mercy by Ahasuerus, by the golden scepter. And then the eunuch Harbona mentions Haman's gallows. They're in the banquet hall, and he mentions the gallows. Can you see the gallows from the banquet hall? If they're 70 feet tall, why not? So, of course, poetic justice. Haman is hanged on the gallows. His body's impaled on this 70-foot tall tree. And then Ahasuerus gives Haman's house to Esther, who then gives it to Mordecai. Did Mordecai inherit Haman's wife and his family too? And then one more time, Esther goes before the king, and of course he shows favor, otherwise we'd have no story. And she requests that an order be written to revoke the letters which had been devised by Haman, even though Ahasuerus approved them. And then Ahasuerus mentions, you may write as you please with regard to the Jews in the name of the king, and seal it with the king's ring, for an edict written in the name of the king and sealed with the king's ring cannot be revoked. Why the hell not? You're the king. You can do whatever the hell you want. And then an edict was written according to all that Mordecai commanded. And by these letters, the king allowed the Jews who were in every city to assemble and defend their lives, to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate any armed force of any people or province that might attack them, with their children and women, and to plunder their goods on a single day throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is in the month of Adar. So this is giving the Jews free license to invent threats in order to commit mass murder and steal the people's possessions. And then it mentions, in every province and in every city, wherever the king's command and his edict came, there was gladness and joy among the Jews, a festival and a holiday. Furthermore, many of the peoples of the country professed to be Jews because the fear of the Jews had fallen upon them. This is a good thing. They deserve it. Thumbs up. And then it mentions that the previous edict hadn't been revoked, so both the Jews and the non-Jews now have license to kill each other. But it mentions that no one could withstand the Jews because the fear of them had fallen upon all the people. So the game's rigged. In the citadel of Susa, the Jews killed 500 people, but they didn't plunder them. Good for them. Why didn't they plunder them? Because previously Haman was referred to as an Agagite, and the Amalekite Agag, who was spared by King Saul when King Saul was supposed to annihilate all of them, was the reason why he was deposed as king. And it also mentions that the 10 sons of Haman were killed. What did they do? They weren't responsible for their dad having self-esteem issues. Then Ahasuerus reports to Esther the number of casualties and asks her what to do. Really? And I guess her bloodthirst hasn't been met yet, because she asks for another day of slaughter in Susa. Except that this day, the edict, for the non-Jews to kill the Jews has elapsed. So the Jews just have free reign to do whatever the hell they want. And she also asked for the 10 sons of Haman to be impaled. So they're impaled, and then the next day, 300 more people are killed in Susa, and in the other provinces, 75,000 people were killed. And then the Jews not in Susa, rested on the 14th day of the month, while the Jews in Susa gathered on the 13th and 14th days and rested on the 15th day, which is probably why Purim was celebrated on 2 days in the city and 1 day outside of the city. And then Mordecai sent letters to all the Jews regarding days of feasting and gladness, sending gifts of food to one another and presents to the poor, all in the name of genocide. And Esther confirmed and fixed the practices regarding Purim. She's the only woman in the Bible credited with establishing religious observance. And that's really the ending of the book of Esther. Now, in my mind, the best thing about this revolting story is that it most likely never happened, because Ahasuerus seems to be equated to the Persian king Xerxes, and nowhere anywhere is it mentioned that he had a queen named Vashti, or a Jewish queen, or a queen named Esther. But the dangerous thing about this story is that it creates ammunition for mentally unsound Jewish people with a persecution complex. See, this gives them biblical ammunition to seek retribution against people who they think they're being persecuted by, for entirely made-up reasons. So, yeah, out of all of the books in the Hebrew Bible, this is the most odious. And that's all I had to say on it.